Hello, I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley.
And I'm her daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Heidi and I want to welcome you to Open to Hope Conversations, the podcast.
We believe that the greatest gift you can give yourself after a loss is hope, using this moment to connect with others who have not only survived but thrived.
So let's get started. Welcome to the Open to Hope Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my daughter, Rebecca Horsley Bara. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Mom.
Heidi's usually on with me, but Rebecca's on today, and it's exciting to have her on as my co-host. Well, Rebecca, we have got a great show today, and we have a wonderful couple that we don't often have couples on, so I'm always excited to get a couple on. We're going to be talking about turning to faith after loss. And would you like to introduce them, Rebecca?
Yes, I'd be happy to. So great to see you both again. We met at Compassionate Friends this summer.
Yes.
So today we have the pleasure of talking to Shayna and David Miles. They lost their 2-year-old son, Levi Michael Miles, in 2021 to AGS. Their Christian faith and trusting in Jesus have done a great deal to support them on their grief journey. They live in Paris, Tennessee, with their daughter, McKenna Grace, and their beagle dog. In honor of their son, Levi, Shayna and David co-founded the Levi Miles Foundation for the purpose of providing support, resources, and inclusion to children with disabilities and rare diseases. Their motto has always been that life is an adventure. Welcome to the show, Shayna and David.
Thank you. We're happy to be here.
So great to have you on. And Levi was a really special little guy, wasn't he?
Yes. He was a force to be reckoned with.
Now, he was actually born with a genetic anomaly. Is that how you say it, a genetic anomaly, or how, you guys have really been in with the genetics, so I want to know.
Yeah. It's a genetic condition, and AGS stands for Aicardi-Goutier syndrome, and it is extremely rare. David actually has figures for us on that.
Yes, there are currently what's documented is there are less than 400 cases in the world of this disease. And actually with Levi's genetic makeup of his condition, of his type, he's the only one recorded with his variances the way that they are.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So there's multiple types of Aicardi-Goutier syndrome, and I actually have a type. And as you can see, it has not affected my life because it's recessive. But David also has a different type than I do. And so together we formed this very unique type that the world has never seen before that came out in Levi. So we had no idea what to expect from this, and neither did our team of doctors.
Oh, did you know that Levi had this while in utero, or after he was born, you discovered it?
We discovered it later on. Levi lived half of his life as a typical child, walking, talking, all boy. And then about Christmas time, so that was about 11 months, he was about 11 months old, he got sick for the very first time. So we'd been fortunate to where he hadn't been sick up until that point. He was just a very healthy child. And then he got sick for the first time at 11 months old, and we saw this disease take over. We had no idea what was going on because his abilities were being stripped from him, where doctors were telling us he's just sick. It's going to take him time to get better. I was told that countless times in the ER and by specialists, and I just countless people. And what was actually going on was this disease, AGS, was fighting his body. So it was fighting itself. So it was killing off even healthy cells that he had. So it was just constantly in fight mode. So when your body is constantly in fight mode, it is attacking your organs, which will eventually shut them off.
Now, how did you find out what he had, and how did you pursue this?
We definitely teamwork here, but that's kind of part of our unique story because David actually has background, with some medical aspects. I'll let you talk about that.
Yeah. So when in college, my passion was in neuromuscular disorders. And so I was biology major, chemistry minor going through college, and somehow ended up in the agriculture field. But I had already conducted quite a bit of research in neuromuscular disorders and leukodystrophies. AGS is actually under the leukodystrophy umbrella because they really didn't know where to put it because it's kind of a disease in and of itself. Shayna was talking about how the body fights itself there, but what it does is when people get sick, your body releases interferon, which attacks the invader cells. So with this disease, Levi's body was constantly releasing interferon. If there's invader cells there for it to attack, then it starts attacking the healthy cells of the body, and it will do so until the point of failure. And that's what we were experiencing with Levi, that we had no idea what was going on.
Now, I've got to say that God's got a hand in this. I mean,
Absolutely.
God is somebody who has got your background, and you know, having a child with this kind of problem, it's really kind of takes my breath away.
And then, you know, David's background of that, and then I'm a special education advocate, and being in this field and knowing our rights together, we worked through all of that. Every doctor's visit, we pushed them to work harder. So the answers that they were giving just weren't good enough. I mean, my biggest concern was the teamwork. Are we networking with other doctors? Have they consulted other doctors before giving a diagnosis? Because we went through a few diagnoses before we got the AGS diagnosis, and we went through every avenue until we said we wanted genetic condition testing. So we both got testing done, but that is not covered by insurance. So that was completely, you know, on us to get, but they had to exhaust all those avenues. And once we found that out, we started making everybody work pretty quickly to go through that process.
Oh man, not covered by insurance. Wow. And you were able to do this. It's an amazing story. Well, now you are pregnant, right?
Yes. So we're expecting a baby girl on March 11th.
Okay. And obviously you've been through all the testing for the
Yes.
baby?
Yes, ma'am. We used the genetic testing that we had done with David and I. So we provided that to IVF, to an IVF doctor. We found a doctor that we felt really comfortable with, one of the best in Nashville, Tennessee. And he was able to take a look at all that and be able to advise the fact that since Levi's the only one in the world with this genetic condition, to advise creating a probe to detect for it. So just like there's probes out there to detect for other conditions, such as even Down syndrome, they needed to create this to detect for Levi's kind of AGS, because we know he's the only one in the entire world. So we didn't even know if that was possible. So months and months and months of waiting for David and I, it felt like, and then they needed one last piece of the puzzle to make it work. And we had no idea, just didn't think about that, but that's actually Levi's DNA to make this probe be effective. And obviously we did not have any of Levi's DNA on hand, and we didn't even know, I mean, he had already passed, so we didn't even know how to go, what was our next step. And we thought that that was the end of the road, but turns out there was another miracle in store. And there was one last vial left at Vanderbilt Hospital that Levi donated to research. So they were able to overnight this vial and use that for the last piece of this to create this probe, which ended up being effective and working. So being able to test our embryos for Levi's kind of AGS to be able to weed out that condition. That way we can figure that out.
Christ carried us through every bit of this. Our faith in him is what carried us through everything. In January, after Levi's first episode, when we were in the hospital at Christmas, we were back in January. Shayna and I both together just surrendered Levi over to Christ at that point and completely let go, because we knew that this was something that was going to be a terminal disease. And we knew that there was nothing that we could do besides fight for him and be caregivers and provide whatever means necessary to provide him the best quality of life. So at that point in time, we surrendered him completely over to Christ and trusted in him with everything with Levi from that point forward. After Levi passed, we both knew that God was still watching over us, that he was carrying us through this, that he was protecting our hearts while allowing us to grieve, but also protecting our hearts at the same time. This has been, as you know as well, losing a child is something that's a total different type of grief than anything else. And without our faith, I really don't think it would have been possible for us to sanely make it to this point today.
Yeah, I think like David said, we had to completely surrender and leave everything just completely up to fate and up to our faith in it, and to believe that everything's going to be okay, even though it may not be the outcome we wanted. I wanted a miracle. I know David wanted a miracle. We've seen miracles. We've heard of miracles, but we both knew, and we never talked about that, but we both knew that wasn't our route with Levi, and that it was best not to have him here suffering, which was extremely hard to be unselfish in that manner.
Wow.
How long was he was diagnosed at 11 months, and how long did he live for from the diagnosis?
When he passed away, he was 27 months old.
27 months.
I wanted to ask you about your faith. How did you come together in this?
I would say it was each other. We both, our faith is similar. We trust in Jesus, and we believe in the Holy Spirit, and we know that it's given to us to carry us through and to guide us through life. And with us having the same ideas on faith like that is kind of what with each other is kind of where we kind of carried each other through with that.
And it's interesting because we were in the middle of finding a new church home during this process, which was another curveball. So we did not have any kind of congregation at the time. It was just David and I, and just that raw faith that we keep talking about, which is it was in each other through God. So it was kind of interesting because we were even able to stand alone there. And then it wasn't until after Levi passed that we found a church home that ended up being a perfect fit, but we were able to carry through even without having a place to go to.
There is some research that shows that people who have a faith-based, whatever it may be, do better.
I can absolutely see that. Yeah.
And I think the surrender is probably the big word for me that I heard there. Don't you, Rebecca?
Yeah. And what I'm thinking about as well, so the two of you supported each other, and also you had the help of your faith. But did you see that you were grieving differently?
Yes, absolutely. We have there's books out there, how different men and women are. And that's just, that's in life in general. When it comes to the grieving process, that was something that really hit me at how differently we both grieve. It was something that was hard for me to understand with her, and I'm sure it was probably hard for her to understand with me as well. But we carry it differently. We grieve differently. We grieved together at the same time, but it's totally different in how we both process this and get through this.
We have that separate grief, and then that's like outside of your grief together. And that was very hard. I know it was very hard for David to understand that I had separate grief outside of our grief together. And I know he was just trying to keep the family together. And it was like, I had to have my own grief as a mother, that was that. I mean, Levi's my only child. So that was it was separate outside of our grief together as a family. So that was something that was difficult to navigate, but actually it was reinforced by hearing you all at the national, the Compassionate Friends Conference. And it was just kind of reinstilled in us once again, which was a really nice reminder.
So did you go to Compassionate Friends group?
We did not, because we do not have any locally.
Oh, maybe.
So I actually,
yeah, we are. We're hoping that.
You are?
Well, we are.
Oh, yay.
Yes. So yes, we're actually going to be launching that right before the Christmas holidays. So really
That's
excited
awesome.
about that. But I had just been time and time again, just one sign after another through God, really, of folks that are saying, you need to reach out to Compassionate Friends. And we didn't have a chapter, near us. But when I saw that the national conference was coming up, I right away booked us tickets, and it was meant to be.
Oh, that's awesome. It was
I'd
so
love
great
to hear more. Tell us about the Levi Miles Foundation.
Do you want me?
Yeah, you go right ahead,
Trying
huh?
to monitor my airtime. Our foundation is built, of course, around the memory of Levi Michael Miles. And because he was so courageous and lived a complete inclusive life, I mean, this child, he lived and he was involved in everything there was to be involved in. It didn't matter if it was going to daycare. So I was so excited to be able to enroll him in that because I didn't know if that was going to be his only school experience. So we lived it up. I mean, I got the backpack, the lunch box that I converted because he was on a feeding tube at that time. So I converted it to a feeding bag for him. I mean, we did it all. He went to the playground every day. He had a full-time nurse with him at all times at school. So he was with his peers 24/7. We had therapists going up to school, so Levi he lived and was not separated from everybody else. Just because we have something stripped of us doesn't mean we should be isolated. So he lived that example. And so through this foundation, we've created a 360 approach to supporting others through that same mindset. So we serve two different populations, kiddos with disabilities and kids with rare diseases. So we understand that those are actually two separate populations, even though they can overlap at times. But Levi fell under the rare disease. And some people would just assume by looking at our child when all of his abilities are being stripped that he had disabilities, but he didn't. He had a rare disease. So we are very much educating folks on that there are differences. Sometimes they can overlap, but not always. So we serve both of those populations from birth to 18 years old. We have also donated over $100,000 worth of Levi's equipment to our community to be lent out to kids that just need it right away to be able to live inclusively in their community. Camps are for our kiddos that are fully inclusive. So it's not a camp for children who have lost, abilities. It is an inclusive camp. So that means it's one camp and everybody is welcome there. We just plan around it and have that lens of everything that could possibly go on there and how to include everybody. So we have that just all those layers of challenges, and we want to just go ahead and pave that route for everybody to see what it looks like, because sometimes we just need to see it. So we work our magic, and these camps are fantastic to where kids are all different walks of life, all different ability levels show up and come and have a time of their life for 2-3 hours, and then we send them home.
That's fabulous. Now,
Yeah.
what's your website? Where can we find you?
The LeviMilesFoundation.org.
Okay. Thank you so much, guys, for being on the show. You're absolutely amazing. And life is an adventure. I mean,
Yes.
that's kind of your motto. You guys know how to live it. And thank you so much for being on it, for all the work you've done.
Yes,
You're
thank
both-
you.
you're both
us.
such an inspiration to the world, and I love how you've been guided to do this work.
Thank you both.
And thanks everybody for joining us on this show today. And Rebecca and I always want to remind you that if you've lost hope, please lean on ours until you find your own, and God bless.
I'm Dr. Heidi Horsley. You have been listening to Open to Hope, the podcast. You can follow Open to Hope on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. To learn more, visit us at opentohope.com and go to Apple Podcasts to subscribe.
I'm Dr. Gloria Horsley. Join us again next week for another Open to Hope conversation, where we invite you to lean on our hope until you find your own.